you on this call. I've known y'all for a while. But some of you maybe have followed my journey, and some of you are probably like, I don't even know who this is. I'm not sure why I'm here. But my journey started about 10 years ago when God decided to interrupt life as usual for me in terms of really interrupting. See, sorry about that. Interrupting how I related to my body and specifically what was going on with my body image and my body image issues. And, it's been a long road. Um, but it's really just been the last year or so that I felt comfortable going back to this concept of health. And the reason is, I think I spent so many years stressing over my health, worrying about my health, thinking that by being thin and eating all the right things and exercising in the right way, that, I was going to always be healthy and guaranteed my health. That consumed so much of my time for so much of my life that there was a season there where it's like, I didn't even want to hear the word. It just kind of made me cringe. But it's been the last year or so where I've realized, like, no, like there's a way to pursue health that doesn't have to look like the world's way and the way that I was taught, frankly, from a very early age. So that's where we're going today. I am so glad you're here. If you have health goals, I hope that this is going to be really helpful. I'm going to talk through my slides for probably about 25 or 30 minutes. And then the last part of this conversation is just going to be your questions. So as things come up, you can feel free to drop questions in the chat. You can also just hold your question until the end, and we'll field your question then. Make sure, if you are on the call, make sure you're muted. That'll just help us because we are going to record this first part, like I mentioned. And then if you have any tech issues or, maybe I said something too quickly and you missed it, you can throw that in the chat too. And my team, Tara and Presley, which you'll find in the chat, they're willing to help you with whatever you need. So let's get going. Okay, so it's January 2nd. What do we normally do to get healthy? Right? Okay, I wish I could see your hands. I can't see them with with this full screen slide, but we normally do these kinds of things. I'd love for you just to, kind of maybe throw in the chat like your hand, raise your hand or whatever. How many of you, beginning of January, it's time to start a new diet? You swear off sugar, you swear off carbs, you swear off fried foods, processed foods, gluten, dairy, meat, you swear off all those things, right? This is a way that we normally approach getting healthy, quote unquote. Other way we normally approach getting healthy is a new exercise program, right? We get all this willpower and gumption, and we're going to exercise 5 days a week, and we're going to go to that gym that we haven't seen the inside of in 6 months, or we're going to start a new program or buy a new program or hire a trainer. We're going to get moving this year. And then the third thing, I don't know, maybe this is just me, but essentially we plan a complete overhaul of our lives. I don't know. Anyone else do that? You decide it's time to change. It's time to change everything. It's a new year, so it's a good time to change. And you're going to wake up early and you're going to work out and you're going to read your Bible and you're going to only eat healthy foods and you're going to go to bed early and you're going to stop binging Netflix. And you decide to make about 100 changes at once. And you've got a lot of willpower on January 2nd, a lot of inspiration, gumption, and motivation. But then what happens? My question for you is, has it worked? Or do you find yourself at the same place every January 2nd, only to find yourself at a different place in February? That's not where you intended to be. So why can't we stick to it? Well, there's a couple things that we believe about ourselves, and I'm going to challenge those concepts a little later, but we believe that we don't stick to it because we have a lack of willpower. We felt shame because we just couldn't stick to the plan, or we just couldn't eat that way for the rest of our lives, right? Or we think we have a lack of discipline and we feel depressed and discouraged because we couldn't keep waking up early. I mean, maybe it worked for 2 weeks, but by week 3, you're just so tired, like it just can't wake up. Or maybe you've believed that change is just impossible. Maybe you've believed that there's something deeply, inherently flawed in you. There's something wrong with you because you've tried the programs and you watch other people or people on Instagram do them and it seems to work for them. And for some reason, it just doesn't work for you. How many of you have maybe struggled to believe those things? You can throw your hand up in chat. But what if the truth is we're just making it too hard? It's it's like climbing Everest. Climbing Everest is hard. And I think when we think about our health goals, especially at the beginning of a new year, we feel like it's life or death. We feel like everything is riding on us to make these big, insurmountable changes. We've got to make huge changes or we'll never be healthy. And it's life or death because we've been told, do these things to get healthy or else. The pressure is so much that I think for most of us, the pressure is what crushes us. So, this piece of information I'm going to share with you now is a piece of information that I would say kind of intuitively I started to figure out, but I didn't really know that it existed and had been studied and researched. And this kind of rattled my whole brain. So I always believed that health was about just really two things: diet and exercise. And then, as you can see on the screen, it was about diet and exercise, which really was about my weight and my willpower. And it's like all of them kind of go together. My willpower impacted my diet and exercise, and that impacted my weight. And these four things right here, this is what decided whether or not I was healthy or unhealthy. But reality is there's a whole lot more to health than most of us consider. I want you to look at this other chart here. So this chart is the determinants of overall health. Let me explain to you a little bit what this is. There's a concept called the social determinants of health. It's a concept from public policy. And it was the World Health Organization on the US CDC together and, well, separately, they've studied really what makes someone healthy or unhealthy. And they look at things like their living conditions, where they live, who's in their community, what kind of access to good food or to medical care or to other things they have, right? And so they've looked at how this affects the age that you die at, how this affects the diseases you'll get. And so this big picture is called the social determinants of overall health. And I want you to look at this chart. This chart shows you the categories on the determinants of your health. So you want to be healthy. Here are the things. Let's just look at these smaller categories for a second. 30% genetics. 15% is your social circumstance. That's whether or not your your zip code is 90210 or Appalachia, North Carolina. Environmental factors, like do you live next to a factory or do you live in the middle of the country where there's not as much air pollution? Healthcare, are you getting good medical health care or, is the quality of your healthcare not that great? And then 40% here, which is actually a little high, they rounded. It's actually 36% of your overall health is determined by individual behavior. So let's look at that just a little bit more carefully here. So, individual behavior, this category right here, and this is the more statistically accurate chart, 36%. Y'all, this isn't about what you eat and how you exercise alone. Inside this 36%, includes this list: your stress level, your anxiety level, your depression level, your conscientiousness level, how you sleep, optimism level. Are you optimistic about life or is your glass half empty? Your life satisfaction level. Are you content or are you always wanting more? Your sexual activity, your motor vehicle behaviors. Okay, just throw your hand up now if one of your New Year's resolutions was to drive better. Right? Like, I don't know. I never put that on my list. And yet, these are a bigger picture of the things that actually make one healthy, right? And that's in addition to like stopping smoking or limiting alcohol use or not using drugs, or like there's other things in here in this individual behavior. So I want y'all just to get the big picture here. As I give you 5 health tips today, and you're like, but Heather, you didn't tell me exactly what to eat. There's a reason for that. Because out of the 100% whole of your health, only 36%, about 1/3 of that, is determined by your individual behavior. And I'm going to say 1/3 of that 1/3 is determined by what you eat and how you exercise. What if it's just as important that you have an optimistic view of life or do as scripture says and be content, right? What if it's just as important that you drive safely? So these are some interesting things. And I want you, I mean, I've talked and written a lot about some of these different aspects, but I want you just to take this bigger picture today as we look at these five healthy strategies. So here's five easy things, easy things that you can do to be healthier in 2025. Before I get going any further, I want to just give you a little bit of information about me for those of you who are just brand new. I've written 4 books. I'm the best-selling author of the 40-Day Body Image Workbook. And I also wrote a book with my story called Compared to Who. I wrote a book on comparison called The Comparison Free Life. And I have a devotional on aging out called Aging Gratefully. I'm a speaker. I'm a podcast host. I'm a mom of 4 teenagers, about to send my first one off to college next year. My husband was a Marine fighter pilot, hoorah, and he became a pastor about 15 years ago. So I'm a pastor's wife. I'm also an ACE certified fitness instructor, and I taught fitness classes and studied health and nutrition to work in gyms for more than 12 years. I actually have a master's degree in public policy. So concepts like the social determinants of health are a little bit more in my natural educated wheelhouse, but I've been studying health and fitness and body image for almost 12 years now. And so I've somehow been behooved it's not behooved. I don't know. Someone bestowed on me. That's the word I'm looking for. The title of body image expert, because I've been studying this for so long and I've written so much about it. But more than anything, I want y'all to know that I'm just a woman on a journey. And my journey has been a journey to be healthier in every way, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And God has led me on this journey that I never expected to take. And it has gone like sharp left, sharp right, twisty up and down, forward 10 steps, back 12 steps, all over the place, more than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't the health journey that I wanted to take, which was just kind of up and to the right, getting healthier every day. And I think at the beginning of the new year, it's important for me to point that out, right? Because that's what we want. I mean, that's what diets promise us, right? You're just going to follow this plan. And at the beginning of 2026, 1 year from now, you're just going to be better, period. But friends, it's never that easy. We are complex beings, physical, emotional, spiritual. It's all part of us. And if we ignore the spiritual, the mental, emotional, and just focus on the physical, friends, we were never going to be as healthy as God intended for us to be. So tip number one, it's the beginning of the new year. How many of you can throw your hand up in the chat if you like, how many of you have sworn off cookies? I mean, I don't know. That was my January thing, swearing off the cookies. Like you're washing the cookie tins and you're like, I am done. I'm never going to eat another cookie again. And that always works for me until I think it's February 1st when those little Girl Scouts come with their boxes of Thin Mints and they would throw me right off. I don't know. Can anyone relate to that? But swearing off the cookies or swearing off sugar or swearing off all the foods that I'm normally eating every day and trying this whole new way of eating. That was kind of always my January plan. I'd go to the grocery store, I'd buy vegetables that I'd never heard of and didn't know what to do with. I'd get rid of, throw away all the sweets, throw away anything that could possibly throw me off my diet and focus on eating this entirely new way. And it never actually worked, or it didn't work for long. And so my first tip for you today is to focus on what you can add instead of subtracting. Something really, I almost want to use the word dangerous, but I'm going to use the word damaging. Something really damaging happens in our brains when we restrict. Okay. Now, restriction is really the core of most diets, although they'll tell you they're not about restriction. Every diet plan I've ever researched and ever been on had a list of things to avoid or things not to eat. Right. But what happens in our brains, what happens to us mentally, physiologically, when we restrict is that we feel, I'm going to call it a scarcity mentality. We feel like, oh no, I'm not going to be safe anymore. And what happens when our bodies feel unsafe, or is a variety of things, right? One of the things is that it can lead to binging, right? So you tell yourself, and I bet you've experienced this. You can throw your hand up in chat if you want to, if you've experienced this, but you tell yourself, I'm not going to eat cookies anymore. And then the Girl Scout comes and you buy the box of Thin Mints and you eat the entire box of Thin Mints, even though you told yourself you were just going to have two. It maybe started with two and then you go back for two more and you go back for two more. I've been there, friends. And I argue from the science that it was my decision to restrict that caused my body, my physiology to want to eat them all because I made my body afraid that it wasn't going to get something that I enjoy. They call it the forbidden fruit syndrome. And, you can obviously figure out where that came from, right? Adam and Eve in the garden. And I really like to use that example when it comes to food, because that's not really what the story of original sin is, not the story of us and our fight with food and diet and body size, right? Those are two very different things. But the forbidden fruit syndrome basically says that if there's something that you're telling your body it can't have over and over and over again, you are going to want it more. And then what happens as you want it more is, I don't know how many of you have the little angel on one side, little devil on the other side, kind of like the cartoon scenario, right? And the devil is saying, eat it, eat it, eat it. And the angel's saying, you can be good, you can be good, you can be good. And I don't really think those are representative of spiritual forces. So hear me on that one, right? But what happens to us internally, right, is we are at war. Like, I want the cookie, but I shouldn't have the cookie, but I want the cookie, but I shouldn't have the cookie, right? And what happens in all of that is we stress ourselves out and it becomes super stressful. Like for some of y'all, it's super stressful just even go in the kitchen, or it's super stressful even to have those foods in your house because they create such a stress response. Like I can't be trusted around that. And it's dangerous. And it's almost like we believe there's a tiger in our pantry that is ready to pounce and take us down. And is it really a tiger or is it just a box of cookies? Friends, the stress is real. I get it. And the scarcity mentality that I talked about, it fuels that fear. And it makes us, it deregulates our bodies and puts us into kind of a hyper vigilance where we are stressed out and keyed up. And my question for you is, if you've tried just restricting, has it worked before? Or has there always been a time when you've had to go back to those things that you restricted? You can throw your answer in the chat if you want to share. So when you focus on adding versus subtracting, here's what you're going to do instead. You're going to focus on abundance. John 10:10 says that Jesus came to give us life and life more abundantly. And if you study the Greek of those words, that more abundantly really means like super abundantly, like he wants us to live a very full life. And food, especially, is one of those good gifts that I think we've been taught to disparage since we were young children. For if you've been on as many diets as I have, food didn't feel like a good gift. Food felt more like that tiger in my pantry that was ready to take me out. But living an abundant life means living a life where I know I have access to all of God's good gifts, and nothing is going to be limited from me in a way that would make me feel unsafe. And so here's how you do this strategy of adding versus subtracting. And some call it habit stacking, but you're going to choose one new thing to add to your life every 21 days. The science is a little muddy. Some people say it actually takes more than 21 days to start a habit, but I would say if you do something for 21 days, you're on the right track. You're doing pretty well, right? So hear me when I say you're not eliminating sugar, eliminating everything you've ever eaten and trying this as your new diet. You are going on as normal, but you are adding things. So maybe that means adding a vegetable when you have a snack. Maybe it means adding breakfast. For those of you who have done intermittent fasting, you haven't had breakfast in a decade. Maybe it means you start eating breakfast. Maybe it just means adding an extra glass of water in the morning when you wake up, or maybe at lunchtime, you drink a glass of water after lunch or before lunch, right? Maybe it means you add a 10-minute walk to your day if normal, regular movement isn't part of what you're used to, right? But if you add one new habit every 21 days, now let's watch my math here, friends. If you add one new habit every 21 days over the course of 2025, you'll have added 17 new habits. Like, that's a lot of habits, but just follow me here for a second, right? I think 17 is probably too many. I know most of you don't need 17 new habits, right? You probably be great with like 7, okay? But think about how much easier this strategy is than maybe what you've done before, which is what I had done before. Restrict everything all of January, part of February, and then eat whatever, and then try to restrict again in May because swimsuit season's here, and then blah, it's July, do whatever. And then August, well, back to school, I should get in routine. I'm going to get strict. And then blah, it's October, the holidays are almost here anyway. Who cares? It's almost January 1st again. I mean, anyone raising their hand? Is that been your pattern? Instead of doing that on again, off again, yo-yo cycle of restrict and then blah, what about habit stacking? What about actually starting new habits? And by stacking them, you maintain them all year. What if you had 7 new habits at this time next year? What would that look like for you? How would that change your life to have 7 new healthy habits? And then here's the other thing, and this is super important because remember, we talked about with restriction and scarcity mentality, we talked about there's this fear, right? There's this stress, there's this failure, there's this shame. Like, I messed up, I ate the cookie. Oh, I might as well eat the whole box of cookies, right? But when you eliminate the scarcity mentality, when you eliminate restriction and stress, there's not the shame and the failure, right? There's no messing up when you're adding things. I mean, you can throw your hand up in chat if you want to. But like, how many of you would go to bed feeling like a failure because you didn't eat that extra carrot? Like, you might think about it if you're trying really hard to incorporate this, but you're probably not going to be like riddling through your brain all night long. I can't believe I didn't eat that extra carrot today, right? It's a different kind of way to approach your health goals. And one I would argue that is so much healthier than the ways we've been taught to do it. Okay, so what does this look like practically? Actually, before I get to practical, let me just kind of give you just a little bit more science behind this. Did you know that it's actually impossible to get rid of bad habits and addictions without a replacement? There's been oodles of studies on this. You can just type that into Google and you can get a list of 20 of them really quickly. The one I cited here is Breaking Habits with Implementation Intentions. So science has studied this, that the most effective way to change what you're doing is to replace it with something else. But there's also a theologian named Sir Thomas Chalmers who lived from about 1750 to early 1800s. He was a Scottish minister. And he had this concept called the expulsive power of a greater affection. And I talk about this concept in my first book, Compared to Who, where I kind of share my body image story. But this concept was really important to me with my body image issues. And that was that we have to replace things that we chase after, things that we desire, with better things. That's the expulsive power, that power to get rid of addictions, bad habits, etc., with a greater affection, something we love more. And you might not love your afternoon vegetable habit more than you love your afternoon vending machine habit. But I'm going to argue, and we'll kind of tie this up at the end when we get there for tip 5. But the greatest love we all need to have, the greatest passion we need to have, is a passion to know Jesus, love Jesus, serve Jesus, want to be more like Jesus. And when that does become our greatest passion, some of these other habits that are there and that have kind of been a byproduct of chasing maybe just physical health at the expense of our spiritual or mental health, some of these other habits can change when we find that greater affection. So how does this look practically? So I kind of alluded to this illustration already, but let me just tell you my story. I was doing intermittent fasting before intermittent fasting was a thing. For those of you who don't know what intermittent fasting is, it's kind of a time restricted eating where you're only eating within a certain window. There may be some benefit to eating within I'm going to say a much wider window than what's currently like promoted out there. But the intermittent fasting community, kind of recommends eating within a 12-hour or 6-hour or 8-hour, like there's all different window sizes, and you're supposed to only eat during that time. And I was doing that not because I knew what intermittent fasting was, but I was doing that because my life mantra had been trying not to eat, right? I believed that if I ate less, then I would be thinner, and that was my ultimate goal. And so I realized that I wasn't really very hungry if I didn't eat breakfast in the morning, and I could kind of make it until like 11 or 12 before I actually needed to eat something. And then I would eat something at 11 or 12, and then I'd be starving like pretty much all afternoon. And so at 3 o'clock every afternoon, I had to have chocolate. And y'all, eh, when I say I had to have chocolate, I want you to understand, like, I'm not one of those people that could eat like 3 out of the bag of M&Ms. Like, I taught a class for my kids' homeschool class and would buy like the jars of M&Ms from Costco. And I could make a pretty good dent in one of those jars in my afternoon 3 o'clock chocolate frenzy. Okay. And this was me. Variations of this, with chocolate chips. I tried buying high quality chocolate, but like I had to have chocolate at 3 o'clock. I just had to have it. So, how this would look with addition versus subtracting is January 2nd. Instead of saying, I'm not going to have chocolate at 3 o'clock in the afternoon anymore, no more chocolate. I'm cutting myself off from chocolate. I'm getting rid of all the chocolate in the house. I'm just done with chocolate, which is not really reasonable. I could probably only sustain that for a week or two. Instead, what I do is I say, I'm going to have my chocolate snack at 3 in the afternoon. But before I have it, I'm going to add something. I'm going to add some raw vegetables. I need more nutrients. Raw vegetables have great nutrients. So I'm going to eat a couple carrots, and I might have some ranch dressing with them. I might, dip them in some spinach artichoke dip from Costco. That stuff is good. Or I might just have them plain if I don't feel like doing anything else. But I'm going to have some vegetables too. I'm going to eat my vegetables. And then after I eat my vegetables, if I still want my chocolate, I'm going to eat my chocolate. And I'll tell you, when I started doing this, it's probably been about 9 months that I started kind of trying to make this transition. It's the strangest thing, y'all. Like, I don't need my 3 o'clock chocolate anymore every day. Sometimes I do, but most of the time I don't. And sometimes I don't even eat my 3 o'clock carrots anymore just because I'm doing other things, or really because I've kind of changed my diet and I focus more on getting nutrients earlier. I eat a big breakfast, actually 2 breakfasts now. Um, but instead of trying to just deny that one habit, by adding a new habit, I was able to replace that quote unquote bad habit with a better habit that got me more nutrients. Here's another one: not having time to work out. Now, I don't know if you have done this too, but for me, it's always been like, well, if I don't have a full like 30 or 45 minutes, like I'm not going to work out, right? And the restriction here would probably be like the equivalent of like, well, I can't do it, so I'm just not going to do it. Um, but when you think about adding, right, anything you do is a bonus when you're adding. So I've got 10 minutes before my next meeting. I'm just going to take a 10-minute walk. And then you are adding, and it's a win. There's no penalty for not getting in the 45 minutes. You've just added 10 minutes of movement. And I don't know, for me, when I just even take that 10-minute walk just once around the block, I feel better. And I'm glad I did it. Here's another one: not having time to read the Bible. Instead of saying, okay, from now on, I'm going to, wake up at 6 a.m. and I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do this so that I can do this. I can read the Bible. What about just making it a goal to add a couple verses every day? Maybe it's that you read a verse before you do anything else on your phone that day, or you open your Bible before you open your phone. But think about what you could add to make that habit something you implement this year instead of what you need to restrict. The last example I have for you on this one is body checking. And this is something that a lot of women with body image issues struggle with. We're constantly doing this, or maybe feeling our stomachs, right? When I help women through body image coaching, when I help them stop body checking, what we often do is I ask them to do something else. So when they feel like they want to body check, they can still feel their stomach, but maybe they'll have a cross necklace that they'll feel, or a soft piece of fabric in their pocket that they'll carry that they'll feel. So we have them add a habit. And eventually the checking and the added habit kind of morphs into just the added habit. Let's see here. So tip 2, honor hunger and fullness. Okay, so most of you probably heard like the number one diet tip is to just stop eating when you're full. But here's something really important I want to let you know. If you are not paying attention to your body when it's hungry, you are not going to have the ability to know when you are full. And I know for some of you, this is going to sound really scary. This is how it was for me for a very long time because I had ignored my hunger for so long. Food, again, was like that pouncing tiger. Food was a scary concept because I was afraid if I started eating, I would never stop. And so I had to have very strict limits on myself in order to make sure that I would stay within these tight, I don't know, I might even call them boundaries because that sounds healthy, doesn't it? I had these boundaries around my restriction to keep me from overeating, from overdoing it. But the root of my problem was that I couldn't feel full because I didn't allow myself to feel hunger. Friend, your body is not the enemy. Your body needs food. It runs on food. God made it to run on nutrients, and those nutrients need to come from food. So don't get mad at your body for telling you what it needs. Don't be angry because your body's hungry. If you're going to bed at night hungry because that's what some diet guru told you to do in 1984, friend, know that they were lying to you. That was not a healthy strategy. So honoring fullness is definitely important, but you have to also honor your hunger. So in order to honor your hunger, I'm going to say you need to let go of certain things. And one of the things you need to let go of is that time restricted eating and skipping breakfast. Now, for women, especially, my friends, now, some of you have this issue. A lot of us have had this issue. It's the issue that I was just talking about, right? You kind of go all morning without eating. You're busy. You're getting maybe kids off to school, or you're getting to work yourself. You're busy and you kind of forget to eat, or you don't have time to sit down and eat something complete. You just have a cup of coffee, or maybe you grab a bar or something like that. But what I found is front loading my day, actually making sure that I have nutrients early in the day when I actually need them, when I'm actually busy, has cured me of that eating later in the day, eating all through dinner, eating late into the night, right? So I would encourage you, let go of any time restricted eating rules that you have and start listening to your body and those hunger signals. Start eating breakfast, even if you're not hungry in the morning. Eventually, once you tell your body it's okay to be hungry in the morning, it will start to get hungry in the morning again. Stop eating on the go and be more thoughtful about your food choices. Bars, I could do a whole webinar on bars, but let me just leave it there. Like, bars are probably not your most satisfying, nourishing thing to enjoy. Stop eating while you're standing. Stop eating while you work. Stop eating foods that you don't like. And your food rules might not be helping you. And I understand that there's a lot of you that might have a disordered eating or an eating disorder background like I do. And so it's not going to be simple to just like, oh, Heather, I'll just do all those things. You may need some additional support. So hear me when I say, I hear that, and we are here for you if you need that. When to get help. If your food rules consume your thoughts, if breaking a food rule feels too dangerous, or if you know you have an eating disorder, again, those things that list I just shared is probably going to be more difficult for some of you than others. Consider getting more help. We just acquired a program last year called the Attunement Reset, and any of our clients that go through group coaching with us can continue on into the second program. It was developed by a dietitian, and it helps you learn more about how to relate to food and how to get rid of those food rules and really find a more healthy relationship with food where you can honor both your hunger and your fullness. Tip 3, minimize stress. Okay, you guys have heard this. You know this. But friend, did you know that stress is actually the leading contributor to all mortality and disease? All the diseases that take us out, right? There's a connection between stress, chronic stress. Stress is the enemy of your health goal, not that box of cookies. And in fact, maybe the stress over the box of cookies could be the enemy of your health goal, right? But so this includes stress over your body image, stress over exercise or not exercising, stress over food. Stress is not your friend. And so there's lots of ways to minimize stress. And you can read this on any Google list, right? You can take a bath in the evening, getting more rest, journaling, prayer, talking to friends, right? You know the list. But let me ask you a question. Do you do the things on this list? So I read a book over Christmas break, written by a doctor, and I'm going to have her on the podcast very soon. But she talked about this necessity to like complete our stress cycle every 24 hours. And we have to complete our stress cycle by doing something intentional that tells our body it's time to chill. It is time to relax. And so that's why like an evening bath or journaling or talking to someone about like maybe what's been stressful during the day. That's why those things are so important because it actually physiologically tells your body it's okay. You can calm down now. But here's the last one that I want to share with you on the stress side. And I think this is so important. And this is something I've been doing for about a decade now since I was in counseling. It's just changed everything. So, you know how sometimes you just feel stress start to rise and you're like, I don't know where it came from. But like, I just all of a sudden, I just have this feeling in my stomach and I'm just like, I don't know what's going on. And I'm just stressing out. One of the most important things you can do is just stop and name it. Like, what is that? And pause. Like, okay, why am I feeling stressed all of a sudden? Oh, I'm feeling stressed because my boss just said that. Or I'm feeling stressed because I was on Instagram and I just saw her picture. I'm feeling stressed because, my kid just made that comment and I'm worried that he's not doing well or she's not doing well. Right. So naming what is stressing you out, even though it sounds super simple, most of us just power through, right? Like I'm stressed. I'm just going to keep going, keep going. But pausing to name what is stressing you out can actually help you not stress as much. If you are having a lot of stress around your body image, let me just encourage you. We've got lots of resources for that. My 40-day body image workbook, the 40-day body image journey, which starts next Tuesday. Our course, the body image freedom framework, our group coaching, individual coaching. These are all ways that we can help you if body image stress is one of your biggest stressors. Tip 4, get a hobby. I'm going to be real quick with this one, right? Because you guys know what hobbies are. But let me just tell you something. Most of us are too busy for hobbies, right? And you're hearing this through like, Heather, I don't have time for that. Make time for that. I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference because joy-filled living is healthy living. I started playing pickleball about 6 months ago. I had mocked pickleball. I had turned down numerous invitations to play pickleball. And let me tell you something, pickleball has brought so much joy into my life. It's given me this community of friends that I play with, and it's fun, and I just enjoy it. What do you enjoy doing? If you think about your life and there's nothing in your life that you enjoy doing other than exercise, because I know some of you exercisers, you're like, I have a hobby, it's working out. But if your hobby is to feed or support your body image and food issues, that's not a hobby, that's work. Okay. That's not something you do just because it brings you joy. So think about what can bring you joy. And that's another way that kind of ties back to the stress. It decreases cortisol. When you do things that you enjoy, it lowers cortisol, lowers your stress and anxiety. And when you do it with friends, it's even better. Tip 5, last one. Focus on your spiritual health. Mark 8:36-38 says, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? Friends, for so many years, like I chased physical health. I chased it hard. I wanted to be healthy and I was always Googling things and trying the new thing and restricting things and all the things, right? And it's really just been the last couple of years that I've recognized really what scripture says in Matthew, right? Like when we seek ye first the kingdom of God, it's like then those things are added to us. Right? I cannot try to be physically healthy outside of being spiritually healthy. And when I'm spiritually healthy, here's what happens, especially for those of you who struggle with body image issues. This is so vitally important. When you're spiritually healthy, you get a sense of purpose. You understand what you're really here for, and that helps you see yourself as more than just a body. It gives you a deeper connection with the only one who can really heal your physical body, and really that goes for your body image issues too. It gives you a deeper connection with the only one who knows what's ahead for you, what your future holds. And it gives you a deeper connection with the only one who can clarify what your identity is. Who are you? That's a question most of us are asking. Like, I don't even know who I am. Jesus can let you know that. So, how do you do this practically? Friend, if you're not in church, if you've been out of church since COVID because it became easier to watch in your pajamas and you don't have any other physical reason not to be there, then go get in church. But don't just show up for church and check it off and leave. You need to be in Christian community. You need to be in community with other believers. This is biblical, friends. But beyond that, this is what makes you spiritually healthy. This is what will help you thrive and feel alive. And it's really fascinating. The body image research shows that women who have strong friends in Christian community do have less of a struggle with body and health and image and all of those things, right? Work through any hangups or hurts you have. Like maybe you're not at church because something bad happened. It hurt. There was a blow up. There was a fight. Like I get it. I've been through that stuff. My husband's a pastor. Okay. But work through those things. Find a counselor, start coaching, do something to help you so that you can be back in Christian community again. Prayer, Bible reading, Christian encouragement through podcasts, sermons. Just get help for any spiritual blocks you might have. And by spiritual blocks, here's what I really mean. I talk to a lot of you. I coach lots of women every week. And we talk about something called, like, I know it in my head, but I can't get my heart to believe it. If that's where you're at, like, you know, your identity is in Christ, you know, God made you fearfully and wonderfully made, like, you know, these things, but you just can't get your heart to believe it. Get some help. You don't have to stay there. And finally, I just want you to know that body image issues are actually spiritual issues too. Body image freedom, once you find it, it can lead to freedom in so many other areas of your life. So many of my clients that are on this call today can probably attest to that. But true health is knowing that you are more than just a body. And it's also knowing that part of you is going to last forever and that part of you isn't your body. And so as we close up today, as we get ready to take your questions, I just want to remind you that health, it doesn't have to be so hard. You don't have to make the slides I just went through your new plan, because I know that's what some of you want to do. Like you can just throw your hand up in the chat if you're like, just give me a plan. Did Heather just give me a plan? I think she just gave me a plan. I've got 5 things to do. No, don't make it your new plan. You don't have to have any shoulds or have tos or put any pressure on yourself. I would say go back to just tip 1. Choose one new habit to implement every month, or maybe choose a new hobby and a new habit, right? But don't overwhelm yourself with trying to make all these changes at once. Again, remember, health doesn't have to be hard, but also remember that health is so much more than your food and your exercise. Health is a lifelong pursuit. It's not accomplished in a day or a month or a year, right? And you're never going to arrive, friends. I know that's a hard thing, right? But it's not like, oh, I'm going to get healthy. And by next December 2025, I'm going to be healthy and I can just stay there. No, like that's not the way life works because we age, right? So it's a lifelong pursuit. So why rush, right? Do things that are sustainable and change those bad habits that you want to change over time so that you can incorporate healthy changes that will last. So I want to just leave you with some tools. These are just some options that we offer here at Compared to Who. The first option is the 40-day journey. Friends, someone today said that it's a steal. No, she said something so much more creative than that, and I can't remember. But she said that they're robbing me blind or something like that. But it's $49, you guys, and it's 6 weeks of you get on a Zoom call, not like this at all, because it's a Zoom call where we're looking at each other and you ask me your questions. We read through my 40-day body image workbook together. And it's just 6 weeks of a really good time to dig into what does scripture say about your body image and food and identity. And at the other side of that 6 weeks, we have many, many women that decide to do the journey again, and sometimes even again, because they learned so much and they grew so much. And the 40-day body image workbook is just packed with a lot of information because, as you may be able to tell, I'm into information overload. But that's a really good thing to just start out with, and we start next Tuesday. So consider joining us for that if you're looking for help in this arena. We also do coaching, and I have an online course called the Body Image Freedom Framework that our coaches go through. So you can either do individual coaching with me, or you can be part of a group coaching program. And then I've got the Compared to Who podcast, which I know many of you already listened to. Tomorrow on the podcast, I'm going to give you 5 more ways to be healthy in 2025. So make sure you listen to tomorrow's episode if you want kind of the part 2 to this webinar. And finally, I've got 4 books. You can see them all there. Compared to Who is kind of my body image story, if you've never read that. The Comparison Free Life is my latest book. It used to be called The Burden of Better, but that's just a more general book if you're looking for some help in really how to grow in grace and sanctification and give yourself grace. That's a great book to start with. And then, of course, the 40-Day Body Image Workbook is the workbook that we'll be reading together on the 40-day journey. And then if you're over 40, you may enjoy Aging Gratefully, which is a new devotional I released last year. It's been getting a lot of good feedback. And finally, if you are new to a Bible reading habit, or maybe you are an avid user of YouVersion, I think I've got 6 reading plans on there now. So you can check out any of my Bible reading plans. And maybe it's a good place to start your Bible reading habit. So that's all I have for you. Also, I created this little printable thing. I probably could have printed it on this more solid paper, but it's just kind of like a reminder of all these things, just a cute little thing. And that's going to go out tomorrow as well. So if you want just like a printable reminder, I'll be sending that out tomorrow. Well, do these 5 things seem doable? Yeah. I mean, I hope to make you feel optimistic, right? Instead of like, it's January, I got to stop doing all the things. Be like, okay, what can I start doing? And that really, you guys, so I turned 50 last summer. And I felt like I was doing okay until about 48. And then all the hormones went crazy. So 48, 49, whew, some havoc wreaked there. But I can tell you that like the last year, just trying to focus on adding more nutrient dense food, trying to focus on not restricting anything, but having a healthier relationship with food, having a healthier relationship with exercise, having a healthier relationship with the Lord. Like those things have really helped me even in the midst of perimenopause. So, I'm optimistic that no matter where you're at in your life, that these will be helpful for you too. Well, thank you all for coming. It was great to see so many of you, and hope that some of you will join us on the 40-day journey next week. It's a really good time.